Split the lottery with us. That's the message my old high school friend sent me 2 days after I won. The day I won the lottery started like the most normal day of my life, which is strange to say, considering how badly everything spiraled after that. I had stopped at a gas station on my way home from work. Nothing special. I bought a drink, a bag of chips, and one of those scratch-off tickets they keep next to the counter. I almost didn't buy it. The guy behind the counter even joked, "Come on, man, today might be your lucky day." I laughed, paid for it, and left. I didn't even scratch it right away. I threw it in the passenger seat of my car and forgot about it for a couple of hours. Later that evening, I was sitting at my kitchen table, eating takeout and watching some random YouTube video, when I remembered the ticket. I grabbed a coin and started scratching. At first, I thought I was reading it wrong. Then I scratched the next section, then the next, and then I just sat there staring at the table. Because the number on the ticket matched every number on the card. Every single one. I checked it again, and again, and again. I even Googled the game rules because I was convinced I was misunderstanding something. But I wasn't. I had just won the lottery. Not the massive national jackpot you see on TV, but still enough money to completely change my life. Several $1,000,000. The kind of money that makes you stop breathing for a moment. I remember standing up from the table and pacing around my apartment like an idiot, holding the ticket in my hand like it might disappear if I blinked. I must have checked it 20 times. Eventually, I called the lottery hotline just to make sure it was real. It was. They confirmed the ticket. They told me what to do next. And then they told me something that, at the time, didn't seem important. "Congratulations," the woman on the phone said. "You should expect some attention once the claim becomes public." I laughed. Attention? From who? I wasn't famous. I didn't post about my life online. I barely even used social media. I figured maybe a few relatives would call, maybe a couple coworkers. But that was it. I had no idea how fast news travels in a small town. 2 days later, the story hit a local news site. Local man wins $4.3 million lottery prize. They didn't show my face, but they used my name. And apparently that was enough. Because that same evening, my phone started vibrating on the kitchen counter. At first, it was just a couple messages. Then a few more. Then a lot more. Names I hadn't seen in years started appearing on my screen. Old classmates. Former coworkers. People I vaguely remembered from high school. The first few messages were normal. "Hey man, saw the news. Congrats. Dude, that's insane. Happy for you. Buy me a beer with that money." Stuff like that. I replied to a few of them, said thanks, tried to be polite. It felt surreal, but not bad. Then a message popped up from a name I hadn't thought about in nearly a decade. Mark. We had been part of the same friend group in high school. Not best friends exactly, but close enough back then. After graduation, everyone went their own way. Jobs, college life. The usual story. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 10 years. His message was short. 3 words. "So when?" I stared at the screen for a second. When what? Before I could type anything, another message appeared. "When are you sending our share?" I actually laughed. Out loud. I figured it was one of those dumb jokes people make when someone wins money. You know the kind. "Don't forget your old friends. Where's my cut?" That sort of thing. So I replied with a laughing emoji and wrote, "Very funny." A few seconds later, another message came through. This time from Dylan. Another guy from the old group. "Mark told me you won." Then another. "We should probably talk." That was the first moment something felt strange. Not alarming. Just strange. Because the tone didn't feel like joking. Then Mark sent another message. "You remember the deal." I frowned at the screen. What deal? For a second, I genuinely had no idea what he was talking about. Then a memory surfaced. It was from a graduation party at the end of senior year. Someone had brought cheap beer. We were all sitting around a fire pit in someone's backyard, talking nonsense the way teenagers do when they think the world belongs to them. At some point, someone joked about winning the lottery, and then someone else said something like, "If any of us ever wins, we split it." Everyone laughed. People made exaggerated promises. "Yeah, we'll all be millionaires together." I remember raising my drink and saying something stupid like, "Deal." It was the kind of moment nobody takes seriously. We were 17. Half the group was drunk. The other half was lying about being drunk. It was just a joke. A stupid high school joke. I hadn't thought about it once in the 10 years since. Until that moment. When Mark sent another message. 6 of us in the group. Then another. So we split it 6 ways. I stared at my phone, and slowly the laughter faded from my face. Because he wasn't joking. And the next message confirmed it. Don't pretend you forgot. That was the moment I realized something. This conversation was not going to end the way I expected. And unfortunately for me, Mark wasn't the only one who remembered that night. Because over the next 10 minutes, 3 more messages appeared. All from the same group of guys. All saying the same thing. You promised. For a few seconds, I just sat there staring at my phone. Part of me still assumed this was some kind of long-running joke. I typed back, "Guys, that was a joke." 3 dots appeared under Mark's name almost immediately. Then the reply came. No, it wasn't. Another message followed right after. You shook on it. I leaned back in my chair and rubbed my forehead. I honestly didn't know how to respond to that. Because yes, technically we had said those words. But it had been a bunch of teenagers around a fire pit making dumb promises about imaginary lottery money. Nobody signs a lifelong financial contract at 17 over cheap beer and bad jokes. At least, that's what I thought. Before I could respond, another message appeared. This one from Jason. Jason had been quieter back in high school. The type who rarely started anything, but always backed whoever was loudest in the room. His message read, "Look, man, we're not trying to be greedy." Then another message. But we all remember that night. I sighed. I typed, "Guys, you can't actually think that was serious." For a moment, nobody replied. Then Mark sent a single message. "You said deal." And right after that, "We all heard you." I felt something in my stomach shift. Not fear exactly, but the uneasy feeling you get when you realize a conversation is heading somewhere ridiculous, and the other person doesn't see it that way at all. So I tried to keep things calm. I wrote, "Come on. We were kids. We were joking around." A minute passed. Then another. Then Mark sent a screenshot. It was a calculator. 6 numbers typed into it. Then the result. 716,666. Followed by a message. That's roughly each share after taxes. I blinked at the screen. He had actually done the math. And that's when the situation stopped feeling like a weird misunderstanding. Because nobody makes a calculator screenshot as part of a joke. Before I could respond, the messages kept coming. Dylan, honestly, that's still a crazy amount of money, even after splitting it. Jason, you'd still have millions. Then Mark again. You'd barely notice it. I felt my jaw tighten. It wasn't even about the money at that point. It was the way they were talking about it. Like it was already decided. Like my money was a group project we just needed to divide up. I typed slowly this time. I'm not sending anyone money. The chat went silent for almost 30 seconds. Then Mark replied. Seriously? I didn't answer. Another message came. You're really going to pretend that promise meant nothing? I rubbed my eyes and stood up from the kitchen table, pacing around my apartment. This had to be some weird misunderstanding. Maybe Mark was just pushing it too far and the others would back down. But then Jason sent another message. It's not even about the money. That sentence made me stop walking. Because every time someone says that, it's absolutely about the money. His next message proved it. It's about keeping your word. Dylan chimed in again. Exactly. Then Mark sent a message that made my stomach drop a little. Everyone from the group remembers that night. Another message followed right after. We can ask them. I stared at the screen. Ask them? Ask who? Before I could respond, Mark answered that question for me. I already talked to 2 of them. Then another message appeared. They agree. My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the group chat. It was a direct message request on Facebook. From someone I hadn't spoken to since graduation. Ryan. Another guy from the old friend group. His message read, "Hey man, Mark told me about the situation." I felt my chest tighten slightly. Situation? I opened the message. Ryan continued. Look, I don't want drama, but that promise was pretty clear. Then he added, You remember shaking hands, right? I set the phone down on the counter and just stared at the wall for a moment. Because what had started as a couple dumb messages was suddenly turning into something bigger. And worse than that, it was spreading. More notifications started appearing. Friend requests. Message requests. People who had absolutely nothing to do with my life anymore suddenly wanted to talk. Most of them said the same thing. Congrats. But a few of them asked something else. Something that made my stomach sink every time I read it. So are you actually splitting it with the group? That's when I realized something important. Mark wasn't just talking about the joke anymore. He was telling people about it. And the more people he told, the more real it was starting to sound. I picked up my phone again and opened the group chat. 23 unread messages. Most of them from Mark. The latest one said, "We should probably handle this like adults." Then the next message appeared. "Let's meet tomorrow and talk about the split." My hands went cold. Because the way he wrote it made it sound like the meeting was just a formality, like the decision had already been made, and I was just expected to show up and sign off on it. I typed a single message. "No." The reply came instantly. From Mark. Just 2 words. "That's selfish." And that's when I understood something that would become painfully clear over the next few days. This wasn't a joke anymore, and Mark had absolutely no intention of letting it go. After Mark called me selfish, the group chat went quiet for a while. Not peaceful quiet. The kind of quiet where you know people are talking somewhere else. Private messages. Side conversations. Screenshots being shared. I could practically picture it. Mark sending messages like, "Can you believe this guy? He's pretending he forgot." We all remember the deal. And the worst part was, I knew exactly how he operated. Back in high school, Mark had always been the loudest person in the room. Not the smartest, not the most reliable, but the kind of guy who could convince people of almost anything if he said it confidently enough. Give someone like that a story about millions of dollars, and suddenly it spreads like wildfire. My phone buzzed again. Another message request, this time from someone named Trevor. Trevor had been in our class, but he hadn't even been part of that graduation party. His message said, "Hey man, heard there's some drama about the lottery." I frowned. "Heard?" I opened the message. "Not trying to get involved," he continued. "But if you made a promise to the guys, you should probably honor it." I actually laughed at that. Trevor hadn't even been there, but somehow he was already giving moral advice. That's when my phone buzzed again. The group chat. Mark had posted something new. A screenshot. It took me a second to realize what I was looking at. It was a photo. An old one. From that graduation party. 6 of us standing around the fire pit with red plastic cups in our hands. I remembered that picture. Someone had posted it years ago. Under the image Mark had typed, "The night the deal was made." Then another message appeared. "Everyone here remembers it." Dylan responded with a thumbs up emoji. Jason wrote, "Facts." I felt a mix of disbelief and irritation rising in my chest. This had gone from ridiculous to absurd. I typed, "That photo proves nothing." Mark responded instantly. "It proves we were all there." Then another message. "You said the words." I stared at the screen. It was like arguing with someone who had already decided reality didn't matter. Then Mark sent another message. This one longer. "Look, nobody's trying to screw you over. You won $4.3 million. We're just asking you to keep your word." Then came the line that made my jaw tighten. "Or did money suddenly make you forget your friends?" There it was. The guilt play. Classic Mark. I typed back, "You guys haven't been my friends for 10 years. The chat exploded after that. Dylan. "Wow. Jason. That's cold." Mark. "So that's how you're playing it." Another message from Mark appeared almost immediately. "After everything we went through?" I almost asked what exactly we had gone through together besides algebra class and bad parties, but I decided against it. Instead, I wrote something simple. "I'm not giving anyone money." 30 seconds passed. Then Mark replied, "Then we're going to have a problem." I felt my stomach tighten again, because suddenly the tone of the conversation had shifted. This wasn't just whining anymore. It sounded like a threat. Before I could respond, another notification popped up. Facebook again. Someone had tagged me in a post. I opened it. It was Mark. Of course it was. The post read, "Crazy how money changes people." Underneath it, he had added, "Some people forget their promises real quick when millions are involved." He hadn't mentioned my name directly, but he didn't need to. Half the comments already knew exactly who he was talking about. One comment read, "Wait, is this about the lottery guy?" Another, "I heard about that." Another, "If he promised he should pay up." My chest felt tight as I scrolled through them. Because the more I read, the more obvious it became that Mark had been talking to people. A lot of people. Telling them his version of the story. And people love stories like that. Especially the kind where someone suddenly gets rich and becomes the villain. I closed the app and threw my phone on the couch. For a moment, I just stood there staring at the wall. This was insane. 3 days ago, my biggest concern had been whether I should replace my old car. Now a bunch of people I hadn't spoken to in a decade were acting like I owed them nearly $1 million. My phone buzzed again. I picked it up slowly. Group chat. Mark again. You've got one chance to fix this. Then another message. Meet us tomorrow night. And finally, or we're going to make sure everyone knows what kind of person you are. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to laugh. Part of me wanted to smash the phone against the wall. But mostly I just felt tired. Because suddenly the lottery win that was supposed to change my life for the better had turned into something else entirely. A problem. And judging by the way Mark was acting, this problem wasn't going away quietly. I didn't go to the meeting. For about an hour after Mark sent that message, I actually considered it. Not because I thought they were right, but because part of me wondered if showing up might calm things down. Maybe I could explain it face to face. Maybe they'd realize how ridiculous this whole thing was. But the more I thought about it, the clearer it became that Mark didn't want a conversation. He wanted pressure. A room full of people staring at me, expecting me to cave. So the next morning I did something else. I called a lawyer. It felt strange explaining the situation out loud. When the lawyer answered the phone, I started with the obvious part. I recently won the lottery, I said. There was a short pause. Congratulations, he replied. Thanks, I said. But that's actually why I'm calling. Then I explained everything. The messages, the old joke from high school, the demands, the Facebook posts, the threats about telling everyone. For a few seconds after I finished talking, the lawyer didn't say anything. Then he sighed quietly. You'd be surprised how often something like this happens. That caught me off guard. Seriously? I asked. All the time, he said. Money has a way of making people remember things that never actually existed. He asked a few questions. Had I signed anything? No. Any written agreement? No. Any kind of contract? No. Then legally speaking, he said, they don't have a case. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. But, he continued, that doesn't mean they'll stop. That part, unfortunately, sounded about right. So what do? I asked. His answer was simple. Send a cease and desist letter. He explained that it was basically a formal notice telling them to stop contacting me, stop making claims, and stop spreading false information. If they keep going after that, he said, then we can talk about harassment. By that afternoon, the letter was ready. It was surprisingly direct. Short paragraphs. Very official language. But the meaning was simple. Stop contacting me. Stop making claims about my money. Stop spreading false statements. Or legal action will follow. I sent copies to Mark, Dylan, Jason, and 2 others from the group. Then I turned my phone off. For the rest of the evening, I ignored everything. No messages. No social media. No checking notifications. Just quiet. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 27 notifications appeared instantly. My stomach tightened as I opened them. Most of them were from the group chat. The first message was from Mark. Are you serious right now? Then another. You got a lawyer involved? Then a longer one. Over a joke? I almost laughed at that. A joke. That's what it was again now. But apparently it hadn't been a joke when they were calculating their $700,000 shares. The next message came from Dylan. Dude, this is getting ridiculous. Jason wrote. Nobody was trying to sue you. And then Mark sent the message that made everything crystal clear. You just destroyed our friendship over money. I stared at that line for a moment. Destroyed our friendship. As if there had still been one. As if the last 10 years of silence hadn't existed. As if demanding hundreds of thousands of dollars wasn't what actually destroyed anything. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Over the next few days, the messages slowed down. The Facebook posts disappeared. Mark deleted his rant. A couple of the other guys sent awkward apologies. Not real ones. The kind that say things like, things just got out of hand. But the interesting part was this. Not one of them ever said they were wrong. They just stopped pushing. Which, honestly, was good enough for me. A week later, the lawyer called again. Looks like they got the message, he said. Good, I replied. Then he said something that stuck with me. You handled this the right way. Most people try to argue with people like that. I thought about the last few days. The messages. The accusations. The sudden wave of people who believed they deserved a piece of something they had nothing to do with. Yeah, I said slowly. I guess I did. After we hung up, I sat on my couch for a while, staring at the quiet phone in my hand. Winning the lottery had definitely changed my life. Just not in the way I expected. Because the most valuable thing it revealed wasn't the money. It was something else. Something much simpler. Winning the lottery didn't show me who my friends were. It showed me exactly who thought they were entitled to my life. And once you see that, cutting them off becomes the easiest decision in the world.